Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is May 19th, and this is another of our bi-weekly SIG CLI calls. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. I don't have any particular announcements. Not sure if Eddie or Sean have anything that they want to broadly announce to the entire SIG. Okay, Sean?
Nope.
Okay, so we're clear on that one. Do we have anyone new on this call that hasn't been here before with us and wants to introduce themselves, speak a lot about background, what they're interested in?
Hi everyone. I'm Vinit Reddy. I'm a final year undergraduate student at IIT Jodhpur, India. I was an intern at Layer 5, which is a community with many open source service mesh projects. I would like to contribute to the Kubernetes project. It was tough for me to choose an area as this is a huge project. So I thought of picking some issues related to CLI and get started with it. So yeah, this is why I'm here.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Noel Rodriguez. I'm one of the two who volunteered as the liaisons for this SIG. I believe the other one is bigger. So yeah, this is my first time I'm attending one of these. I'm fairly new to the whole community. So thought of volunteering as a liaison just to get in. So hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's for me. So my name is Hamdi. I'm new on this call. It's my first time I produce something in the community of Kubernetes and customized. I'm from Paris, from France, and we start using Kubernetes and customized since 2 years, and now we are really in production, and we have some idea to improve customize. This is why I'm here.
Cool, welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wants to introduce himself? Okay, hearing none. Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to have you on our call. Okay, we can move on to the main topics, and I'll pass the baton to Eddie. I think he has the most topics to walk through. Eddie, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I've been fighting with the indentation in Google Docs, which I always do.
Okay, let me stop. Go ahead.
Okay. A little bigger. People see that okay?
Yeah, looks great.
All right. So the big ticket item for today is I wanted to go through our enhancements KEP backlog. There's a bunch of issues that got migrated that don't really have any status or aren't tracked. So I pushed that to the end because I want to make sure we get through everyone else's stuff. Outside of that, I just took the topics that have been sitting at the top of future topics for like probably 6 months now and moved them down. So we can get through these and remove them from the agenda once and for all, hopefully. So the first one up was graduation criteria for plugins. And this was something we wanted to talk about a while ago. I think this ties in nicely to how we're going to be prioritizing work now by community response with thumbs ups and emojis and stuff. But the TLDR is that we have some really nice functionality that people have built with kube control plugins that might make sense to land in upstream kube control. So do we have any thoughts on what that process would look like? Any criteria we want for people to be proposing upstreaming them?
So Eddie, so just so I understand this particular topic, you're asking for what graduation criteria would be for specific plugins already created that we may end up pulling into Kube Control, not into the plugin code that's already in Kube Control itself.
Correct. And a good example of this would be Kube Control Debug, which is now, it started as a plugin, it's now an upstreamed beta command.
I would probably start with the author's interest in being part of the main Kubernetes. Because if a particular author is not interested in being a built-in command, which has some limitations with regard to how frequently release, or the fact that it will live under Kubernetes or Kubernetes kubectl in the near future, we don't want to force anyone to do it. And on top of that, we only have limited resources to handle the current load of command. So that's something that I would start with. If the author is interested, that's the preliminary step. On top of that, I would probably try to measure the statistics, and I think the crew has these kinds of statistics. I think Chris can prove me wrong.
We have like pretty basic metrics around plugin downloads. It's really just GitHub downloads, so it's kind of hard to say. Like kubectl debug was kind of a little more obvious just because it was pretty popular and it was easy to see, but there are some smaller ones that are harder to tell with the metrics that we have available.
Yeah, so that's one side of the metric. The other one might be the authors can actually track their download statistics, because not everyone will be using crew, but they might be going directly, and they might have a direct statistics on their end, which would be something that we would consider. And thirdly, the overall request coming from a community to have a particular command be in the core Kubernetes would be probably my 3 metrics that I would start with. So basically, I would start with author reaching out to us based on the statistics that he can present, either from crew or his own, and then we can open an issue and see, and I'll leave it open and try to measure how big the support is for a particular command to be a built-in. Based on that, we would start the bringing in, and it would, yeah, go ahead.
Would we want that to be done through the KEP process, especially if like this is going to be an entirely new subcommand, for example, when integrated?
Probably so. Probably so.
That's what we told D. Tyler with the Kube Control Cuddle color plugin, was to start with the KEP.
Just from my perspective, I'd actually, I think it'd be interesting for us to enumerate a couple of the plugins that we think are good plugins, that are plugins that really meet a need and that we recommend to others, just to get an idea of what those are, what the universe of candidates may be.
I mean, it will be always on a per command basis. For an example, Eddie mentioned already debug, which is a good example and a good initial command that we went from a plugin to a built-in. and how it's rolling can be easily tracked through both cap and the implementation and what's going on with the command. So that would be the example. I wonder if we would want to write down the graduation criteria in somewhat more formal way.
Yeah, I'll write all this up in our docs. I was just taking notes here. As far as Sean's comment though, something like kube control get all, right? Like that's been a thorn for a very long time. We see tons of issues for it. There, we could proactively seek out like the get all plugin out there and see if they're interested in replacing that functionality. Right? There's a plugin that actually does get all from all the API resources and CRDs, right? So I'm not saying we have to do that, but that's like an example where we can look, if there's a problem that's bugging us, we can always look for the community to see if there is a solution.
Another example that I think has come up on these calls in the past is kube control lint, where we said that we would accept a linter and we asked somebody to implement it potentially from scratch as an experimental, but there's also the fact that there's a lot of linters that already exist as plugins. So this approach could be an alternative for something like that as well. And I guess that can also point out that there can be cases where there's something that exists as a plugin, but the way that we integrate it into upstream might not be just like take what exists and integrate it. It could be like build a framework around it or take pieces of the functionality, or so that I think highlights the importance of putting it through KEP to discuss exactly what would look like and how well it matches what already exists versus what will need to evolve.
Right. I updated the doc that we will not start with a cap, but rather start with an issue in kubectl repo to gather the plus minus ones. And then we will actually do the final decision during one of our calls. And then we can steer the actual direction of the cap and what will be included and what not.
Oh, this is cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
Chris.
This just uses the GitHub API to track like the number of release asset downloads or something. So it's not, that's the only information we have here.
All right, I'll add this to the doc. Oh yeah, get all is very popular.
I might object to that one.
That's fine, but eventually we're going to have to deal with that issue,
yes,
whether we deprecate it or whatever. But people really seem to get stuck on that. Cool. Any other thoughts on plugin criteria?
I started wondering, maybe that's slightly related. The discussion is about stuff like graduation criteria, our approach for future topics that we will be working on, and so forth. I wonder if the docs are a good place for it, or maybe we could have something else. It's definitely not a cap, because it's not an enhancement. It's more like a directions for how to work with us. Maybe that should be something that we should expose somewhere in the community repo, or yet another way. And I think it would be good to figure it out finally.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can always put it in the developer guide, or we do have our own docs site too, which I've been talking to the SIG docs teams about figuring out how to consolidate all that too. Okay, well, I'll write it up for now and then we can find where it lives. moving on. All right, so Triage Party is a tool built by Thomas over at Google. We usually run through this for our bug scrubs. It's basically a giant collection of YAML filters that you can use to sort out issues based on labels and whatnot. I've run a instance for the kubectl repo for a while, but I just started working on expanding this to all of our other SIG CLI repos. I will get this moved to Kubernetes infrastructure at some point, but you can take a look at the config, which is in this gist right now, and you'll see it's just a bunch of YAML filters. Thomas he gave a walkthrough of this at some point. I'll see if I can dig up the video if anyone's interested. But I have an open PR right now for Triage Party. The way that it was originally designed was basically for one repo, really. But I like the idea of having all of our individual repos broken out at the top here. These are what they call collections. So you can see customize is up here broken out with all the customized issues. And so I have a PR that adds basically all these rules, these individual rules. So this is like new SIG CLI issue needs triage, right? So it's a type of issue with some filters on here. The original idea was that rules would be scoped to repos. So you would have to create a rule for each repo. The PR I opened adds repos to the collections. So this will pass down the actual repos you want and the rules will apply it. That makes it a lot cleaner because we originally had to have a copy pasted rule for every single repo. So basically, if you want to play with this, you have to use my fork for now until it gets merged upstream. But yeah, so take a look at Triage Party. I'm also writing up a little handbook, basically, so we can hopefully have people run through triage as like a role as part of the weekly things. But yeah, that's the TLDR there. I've been promising it for a while, and I finally started working on it.
You mean your fork of the Triage Party?
Yeah, let me put that in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really short PR, so.
I have a bug because if I'm looking at a half screen, I'm not seeing the top level things. Not sure if that's related to your particular PR or with the Triage Party itself.
You're not seeing
the
things up here?
Yeah, if I have a I'm using half of my screen because the other half is used by Zoom currently, and in which case these are disappearing for whatever reason. Just observation. If I do it full screen, it shows.
Okay.
Someone else was trying to say something. Sorry, I got you halfway through.
Oh, I was just trying to thank Eddie for doing that. I'm really excited to have that for customize in particular.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what's going to be helpful, right? So this definitely there's a ton of options for this thing. I'll put the options for filters in here too. But feel free to let me know what's useful, what's not, what you'd like to see instead. And then we can go from there. And again, I'll get this moved to Kubernetes infrastructure so we can just PR it to make changes at some point. Dark mode, yes. You gotta get on the extension Mache has. It works so well.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts for Triage Party? Okay, real quick, I want to get through this issue. It's been open for a minute. It's about to close itself. This was drain helpers defaulting to delete immediately. This was a pretty reasonable request, and oh, looks like, okay, that's APR with comments. Someone want to say something, Doug?
Yeah, I didn't manage to look into this one yet. To be honest, I'm a little behind on my query, and if anyone wants to complete the task, feel free. Until we get my query clean up, and close everything I need.
Okay, we will keep it open for now then. Someone, if anyone wants to take a look
Thank
at this, please feel free. I think it was a reasonable request. We just never got around to doing it. So, okay, Mache, you have one in here. Deprecation of record flag.
Yeah, I quickly checked what I meant with that. I'm not 100% sure, but from what I've noticed is we have this record flag, which allows you to record what's going on with any particular command. It is wired in some of the commands, but I think it's not everywhere. But you need to explicitly use it for the change cause annotation to be recorded on any particular resource. This could be theoretically similar to what we do when we are invoking OC apply. The thing is, for OC apply, we do it automatically, and the annotation is obviously different. And we store the previous state of the object. For change cause, I can't remember what we exactly recorded, but it's a rather short information what actually changed, more or less. So at least from quick glancing the code, it looks like it's just a text. You can put in almost anything over there. But given that it's you need to be explicit about pointing it out, I wonder how many people are actually using it. Oh, and the consumers for that are, for example, rollout history. So theoretically, you can record why you changed a particular resource, and then you can record that, review that through deployment history or say full step, or basically any controller history. And I started wondering how many people are actually using that, and whether it would just make sense to get rid of it if there are not that many users. I'm definitely open to sending out an email to Kate's Dev and SIG CLI with that question. If, let's say, I don't hear any objections, I'll start the deprecation clock in 122, and in over a year, we will be able to drop it. If you know about anyone using it on purpose or explicitly, let me know, and then we will drop the idea. But other than that, I think it's just, yeah.
The documentation, the inline documentation anyway, for the record flag says that it's specifically recording the kubectl command that was used. So I wonder if there's an intersection here with the fact that we now have a better, like, that with the Sean's work, we now can emit actual metrics about that, so it doesn't depend on scraping annotations or enabling it when on every client invocation.
Exactly. You need to be explicit about using that to actually benefit from it. So if, at least from what I was checking, there's not that many people using it, then most likely we could just probably drop it. And I know I'm known for removing stuff, and I've been complained at for different stuff being removed, but I don't care. I'm here to clean some of the old stuff that were added and nobody is using, because it will just make our code easier to reason about.
I guess my point is that it might be worth mentioning the new functionality that is, because it's behind an alpha flag and there's not much documentation around it. So people might not know that that's an upcoming alternative. And if their use case relates to trying to figure out how their stuff is being created, that would be like a better way that they could do it.
So there'll be some documentation for when we move to beta, and we specifically decided against putting some documentation for alpha just because it is alpha and not clear that it's going to be actually something that people can rely on. But as it moves to beta, we're definitely going to be adding documentation to, at the very least, explain that there are these extra kubectl flags and how to turn them off. If if you need to.
And especially if in 122, Sean's work will be on by default, it's a good starting point to replace the record flag and start the deprecation.
I had always wondered if anybody ever used that record flag. And I know that as a lot of teams have moved to GitOps, it kind of is, you know, it's kind of a vestige that isn't necessary.
And on top of that, if you do care about stuff like that, there's auditing, which has a very detailed, or it can have very detailed information about who, when, and what was done to any particular resource across the board in the Kubernetes. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts? I put action item, you will send an email, Mache. Okay, I don't think Ricardo is on the call, but his question was, should all create commands have support for labels? And there is a PR that's been open for a while. And I know, yeah, Ricardo's been in here doing some code review.
I've seen that PR. I didn't get a chance to look through it.
I can punt it to next time, see if Ricardo's around. Back to future topics it goes. Okay. Hamdi, I think you are here.
Yeah.
Do you need to share your screen?
So just one moment. Sorry.
No worries.
Because I'm with iPad, so I have to connect with my PC.
Oh, okay. You want us to come back, do it one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Yuvaraj, I think you're here. Yes.
Yep. Hi. I came across an issue for adding extra column support to the kubectl command. And I think it's like midway between using the default columns and using custom columns, which is like defining every column. And it looks like we will have to, I mean, if you want to support this, we'll have to add additional all custom column support to the server-side print. And I found a to-do in the code base saying that custom columns is currently not supported in server-side print. I wanted to get feedback on I want to get your thoughts on the overall issue itself, if that's something we should look at, if there was discussion around this already, or what is the next steps with this?
So custom columns, since this will be something that will vary from resource to resource, it's not something that we need to do on the server side. Server-side printing has an option to request the full resource. There's a separate parameter that you pass when requesting, such that you get the server-side printing columns, which is a table, and explicitly you need to request a full JSON of the resource. This is also needed and it's being used, for example, for sorting. So for custom columns, that's what I would probably use. I can't remember if, what was the original idea? I think it was about being able to add additional columns to the built-ins,
yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the issue is basically asking for, if you use custom columns right now, people have to define all the columns, right? So the idea behind the issue is, I don't want to define all the columns. I just want the default columns plus an additional set of columns that I can define. So basically extra columns. So is this an issue? Is that a issue that needs follow-up? Should we work on this, or is that something that is not of interest?
I think it's worth picking up. I see that it is getting the necessary feedback that we've mentioned in the past. The original issue has more than 40 plus 41 plus ones. The new one already has 15 on it. So it's definitely something that we could include. And if you're interested particularly in implementing that, give it a shot.
Sure. Yeah.
It most likely will be what I'm saying. It will be very similar to custom columns, because custom columns should be, although actually custom columns, it will be requesting full resource and just parsing the additional ones. But it should be similar to sorting, such that you should be able to request the full resource in addition to the tables.
Okay.
If you'll be struggling with it, ping me on Slack and I can guide you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks for offering to take that up for sure. Okay, Hamdi, you good?
Yeah, good.
Okay. I think Machi needs to make you co-host.
You should be also as well.
I think I can share my screen.
Okay, you should be good. Hamdi, can you retry sharing your screen? You should now be able to do it.
Yeah, good. Oh, sorry. So yeah, so I will speak about this issue. So the idea is to improve build time for remote layers in Kustomize. And I have pull request and there. Yeah, so in this pull request, the idea is to improve, as I say, improve the customized build performance, so the time to build. And so we consider Git resources in Kustomize, like code dependencies or other Maven dependencies. So we use the same mechanism to cache dependencies in the local disk. The idea is if we visit a repository twice in the same build, we use a hidden version, so a cached version in the local disk. And also we can use reuse between two builds, so the same cached version. Concretely, we differentiate between mutable and immutable reference, and we consider that the branch reference are mutable and commit ID or tag are immutable. And then, so we store mutable and so branch or tag reference in different directories. And when we visit a reference, we decide to store or not this reference. So if it is a mutable one, maybe we don't store it. If it is an immutable one, we store it in the local cache. And we have an option. I'm adding an option to decide whether or not accept branch. So this is the main idea I have with this pull request.
I think in the PR we discussed having this behind a flag as well, right? That was an idea that we were in favor of.
Yeah, the idea now we have two flags. One flag to activate or not the Git cache cloner. So if we have the cache Git cloner flag we use the cache or not. The default is false, and the new flag is to accept or not branch reference.
And is that flag generally applicable to the Git cloner, or is it specific for the cache functionality? Like, does it also block mutable references if you're not using the cache?
I don't know. We have to decide. So I think the second flag, so to decide to accept or not branch reference, should be used in the twice, so with cache or not. And the default
that makes sense to me.
Sorry?
Yeah, that makes sense to me that it would be independent.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. This is Jeff. Thank you for sending out the PR. I'm looking at it today. Thanks for also rebasing and squashing the commits. I'm going to ask for some more tests on this thing to confirm things like, can we blow away the cache and have normal operation? Because I don't want customized. It shouldn't necessarily be in the business of managing a complicated cache. So this needs to be really simple. Clone the repo, put it into the caching directory. If you blow it away, it still works. And to the extent that you can with the testing for this, please use the fake file system so that we don't have more tests that are actually depending on a real file system. So you can put some stuff in the cache that looks like a downloaded repository, for example. But anyway, there's a lot of people who want this feature, so I think as long as it stays simple, we can go ahead and add it. I don't think it's going to go into the next release, but it'll be on deck for the release following the next release. Thanks.
Are there any topics? Sorry, questions? Okay, cool. And back to you, Eddie.
Okay. I'm taking screen sharing back. So last thing I want to spend some time on. Actually, do you want to do stand-ups first, Jeff? And
Sure. Katrina and I, we could do a customized stand-up. Briefly, we've been talking about the roadmap, and we've been talking about how to bring in more people to work on customize. And at the next SIG CLI meeting, I'd like to put on the agenda a discussion of how to do that. So we're setting up some projects and going through a lot of the issues to try to find places where people can contribute and organize them in the projects that have well-defined endpoints. Because we're really eager to get some more people familiar with the code base, familiar with the release process, familiar with how this all works with kubectl, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm hoping that we can get, like 15, 20 minutes next 6 CLI meeting to present some of that stuff 2 weeks from now.
Jeff, I would encourage you to send out an email to SIG CLI and maybe even KDEV that there will be a discussion like that happening in 2 weeks during our SIG CLI. And
okay, great, sure.
Maybe you can get additional people interested in this topic to show up as well.
Great idea, Majid. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Nick, anything for KUI you want to talk about?
So yeah, as I mentioned in the blog there, we're about to release a new version. Mostly it's bug fixes. We've actually had a couple of community feedbacks, some not so kind of embarrassing bugs that we fixed, and we'll release them pretty shortly. Yeah, I guess they always sneak through the cracks. So that'll come out over the next few days. We'll get those embarrassing bugs fixed and released. We've also a bunch of security fixes, rolled into version bumps, all the standard stuff. We have a bunch of stuff happening sort of behind the scenes for improved support for Kubernetes jobs. Some of it has already landed in KUI, but some will land in 10.4, hopefully in a few weeks. So that's just generally improvement for a more serverless approach, to Kubernetes, focused on jobs, dashboarding, getting status of ongoing jobs. That'll all land in full force, hopefully in a few weeks. Excuse me. I did have one quick question, if you don't mind, for around log streaming with respect to jobs. So if I do a log follow with a label selector, let's say I want to follow a set of jobs that all have a common label. All the logs of a set of jobs that all have a common label. Typically with jobs, the pods are going to sort of come and go as the job scheduler happens to portion out the jobs based on your quota, for example. So you may have 5 jobs running and they finish, 5 more jobs start up and so on. And so, but they all have a common label. So in kubectl, at least as far as I can tell now, if I say logs-f-l, the follower will exit as soon as that first set of 5 jobs finishes. And it's up to me to respawn the logs follower again with the same label selector. It's sort of up to me to manage the outer loop of jobs. Has any thought been put into logs following versus jobs? It seems like this would be a common UX issue.
I can already tell you what is the reason for this. When we set up logs, we do a check for the pods that are active. And based on that information, we set up the necessary logs request to a particular pod, because each and every single pod is basically an endpoint on the API server. So what we would have to do is for job itself, because that most likely, or well, even during a rollout of a deployment or any kind of long-running workload, the same problem will appear, because during a rollout, there's a change of pods which were previously running and are currently running.
That's a good point, yeah. It's not just jobs, yeah.
Yes, it will also affect rollouts of other controllers. So yeah, I guess we just need to fix it. Nobody complained about it before.
I mean, the outer loop isn't that difficult to manage, but it does seem like it's a case that should just be baked into kubectl, if possible.
That's a separate question, because I mean, I'm inclined to accept the PR fixing the issue if it will be manageable. But my worry is that it is very hard to justify, because as long as for long-running workloads, it's more or less predictable, at least for deployments. Although even for deployments, the rollout, if you're running, I don't know, 5 replica deployment, the rollout will be gradual, similarly for stateful set. So whenever one stream ends, you would have to close all, relist the pods and set up new ones. And
yeah, that's the complicated part of that loop.
Yeah.
That some may already be done. You don't want to refetch their logs. That's sort of the complicated part. It seems like it might be great if we could just do once for everyone.
Yeah. So you would have to basically maintain a list of what has been already processed, and you can safely ignore, and where you would have to start in new watchers for particular restarts. I know it seems simple, but under the cover, it will require a little bit of more thoughts.
Yep.
And
definitely non-trivial, I would agree. Yeah. In some cases, like jobs, you have a sense of the countdown latch, right? You know how many pods to expect. In other cases, like you're mentioning, it's more of an infinite loop. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances here.
Even for a job, it can be an infinite loop because there is an option for a job to, you don't specify completions, but you can specify parallelism, which means there will be this many pods running a particular job as long as at least one succeeds.
I see.
And then the entire job is marked as completed. That's one of the possible working stuff.
Yep.
If anyone's interested in, I'm open to seeing the PR, but it will require some additional thought into how to efficiently work this out.
Yep, agreed. Thanks.
Chris, anything for crew?
No, nothing from our side.
Cool. Okay, so jumping into this, we have about 9 minutes left. There are a bunch of these KEPs that are open, and a lot of them were migrated from the old template, so we don't have any context or conversations around the discussion that was happened previously. So I'd like to go through these, the ones that are kind of migrated and not really commented on. Katrina, I think you said that you would take care of the customized ones. Do you want to do those here or?
I started looking into the like text itself yesterday, but I didn't get very far. I was planning on taking care of some more of that today and submitting a PR with updates.
Cool. So these issues that are opened, should these be, that's a good question. I see we have Jeremy on the call. Should these be closed if they're implemented?
Yeah, if a KEP has been implemented, then whatever tracking issue is associated with it can be closed. That's the point at which they should be closed.
And I think we should update the description on the issue such that it reflects that it is actually implemented, because currently if you look at this one, it ends at alpha.
Yeah.
And maybe we can drop that entirely and just mention that it was stable in a particular release and just leave it as is.
Yeah, that's pretty acceptable. As long as like the metadata and the KEP itself is correct and reflects that stuff, that's the most important part.
Got it. Okay, so I'll skip over the customized ones now. We can always come back to these if you want, Katrina. This is the future of kube control copy.
I'll handle that one. I was involved in that one and I was working on this one, so I'll handle this one.
Okay, I will assign you to it. Data-driven commands for kubectl.
yeah, that looks like Phil's idea from the past, but I think it was just created and nothing else happened. It might be an idea that was just written down, but we never continued on that one.
All right, I will check with Phil on Slack to see where that is. Is this one just adding customize itself? Oh yeah, yeah, that could probably be closed, huh? Customize CUI enhancements. Okay, this one is new, so we can leave that.
Yeah, but that was just for the migration. So I think we can close because we are done with that one. I can, I'll follow up on this one. Can you assign that one as a ticket to me?
Okay.
Thanks.
XDDG, okay, Doug is on that one. I think we ultimately decided to close that, right, Doug?
What I wanted to see is merge the cap as rejected, and then we can close the issue as well. So that for future, if anyone will be looking for this, he can find the cap and the cap will write that this was rejected. That's a valid statement. And
yes,
we will merge it as such for future generation to know why we went this route.
Cool, good call. Default container annotation. I think this, so this is tracked. This one's current.
Yeah, it's on for the next release. So I think
cool.
We can leave it as is. Same for debug.
Omit managed fields on the server side.
That there is a very lengthy discussion about this topic, going back and forth. I would leave it open for now still.
Okay. Allow customized users. Okay, so we'll take out that one's current. kubectl debug, that's current and being tracked.
Yeah.
kubectl events. Oh, it's actually not being tracked. Should that
be? Debug is pushed over to the next release. I spoke with Lee about it last week or something like that. It will be pushed to the next release.
Yeah, well, especially with the ephemeral containers changes, right?
Yes. Yeah, we basically want to have the ephemeral containers first initiated, and then we will be finishing the kubectl debug.
Okay. kubectl events.
That's an ongoing topic. I have someone who created this. I'll give it a look, but it's definitely not something that we want to track yet. I'm hoping for the next release. Yeah, I'll be able to return to this.
Okay. Support generators and transform. Okay, that's customize. Include. Okay, Sean is working on this one. This will land. Server-side apply. Antoine's
that's a current topic. Yeah.
And ephemeral containers. Okay.
So while we just went over the server-side apply, I just had a quick question, which is kind of on a tangent. This won't take too long, but we removed Antoine from the CLI maintainers. Was that on purpose? Because he's kind of the expert in a couple of the commands for kube control, like for
that was a separate issue that was in the org. We didn't remove him from the reviewers and approvers.
Okay, yeah, that was admin access to the repo.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So no, I'm on a watch out. I would not remove Antoine from approvers from SIG CLI. Definitely not.
And if Antoine wants admin access back, we can always give it to him. Okay, and that's it then. So all right, so the migrated ones are mostly the customized ones. So if Katrina, if you want to go through those as a group at a next meeting, we totally can do that. I wonder why they were all migrated like that.
There was a big migration effort. Someone from, I think probably Jeremy can speak about it, but I was pinged by Wojciech when the template for the SIG for CAPS changed a couple months back. There was a group, oh, we need to fix them and have all the CAPS migrated. I think the folks from the prod readiness were implementing the automation on the CAPS. And for that, they needed to have all the pre-existing CAPS not to fail. So that's what basically happened. I was approving majority of those CAPS. Wojtek reached out to me on Slack.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. As there was more stuff going into the validation process for the CAPS, which is goodness all around, right? It checks a lot of things, makes it easier for like reviewers to make sure that things are good, makes it easier for the release team, makes it easier for the prod readiness team. There were a whole bunch of things that were like out of date, and there have been like 4 or 5 revisions of that chem template over time. So there's some other work happening that will make that easier going forward. But to kind of get over that hump, there was a big push to just move them all. And Shekar did like 90% of them.
That's awesome. Thank you for the context there.
Yeah, I'll just do my best to update both the kept text and the issues for the customized ones, and I'll touch base with Jeff when I can't figure stuff out, and if there's anything outstanding, we can go over it at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Can you edit the CAPS, Katrina? We might need to add you to that repo.
Can I edit them? Oh, do you mean
edit
the descriptions?
Yes.
Good point. Probably not.
Okay, we can open a PR to add you to that.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. We're at top of the hour. And that will be all. Thank you very much all for an amazing meeting as usual. And see you, if I remember correctly, next week for Box Crop. Bye, all.